So I'd actually like to invite Kathy Scarborough up first as our first speaker. And while she's coming up here, getting ready, all in her mind, Kathy is part of KESAB. She joined KESAB in 2003 as a casual teacher in their education center at their statewide recycling, and actually became full-time in 2008. Her current role is as Waste Audit Manager, working with businesses, industries, and council curbside collections, and also within a lot of building sites and stuff like that, from what I understand. I'll let her get into that a lot.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a very short amateur video filmed by my daughter at last Waste Management Association of Australia conference. So what happened, I'll just give you the background before he hits play, and I hope you're not too disturbed. It is nearly 3 minutes of your life that you'll never get back. But I was presenting on the Friday, and the Thursday night was the conference dinner. And we understand, don't we, that when people go to the conference dinner on the Thursday night, they are fundamentally trashed on the Friday, especially in the waste industry. So it's true. You should have seen them struggling. And I was the last presenter in a block of 5 in the last session on the Friday. And I know I've spent a long time, many years, looking through bins with my dear friend and colleague up the back, Joe Hendricks. And I decided that rather than bore them, because I just can't do corporate straight either, I'm not good at it, but I decided to audit the event bins, and this is what happened. This one is really interesting, and I'm going to get tongs out for this, because it has gone in a general waste bin. Let me tell you, the smell of coffee is extremely strong down here. And everything is covered in it. So there was a bin option for rigid plastics. That's been missed. These have gone into general waste, okay? There's a few more rigid plastics. There was, interestingly, I'm going to use my hands for this, there was a paper collection, which is unusual because you wouldn't expect there to be that much paper to warrant all of those bins. But yeah, this has gone into general waste. So pretty well that's it. There's a couple of rigid plastics. Oh yeah, sorry. So out of all of those bin materials in general waste, I'd be careful not to make too much of a mess. Magician. Okay, here is actually the general waste. So out of all of this on this trolley, this is the portion that's waste materials. So we're getting that? Okay. I don't know if you can see. Come up and see later. So there's just a bit of packaging down the bottom. All right. So, had there been different bin systems, then there would have been a lot more diverted from landfill. But as it stands, everything on this trolley, other than my gloves and tongs, was headed for landfill. So, they've got every system in place back of house, but in the actual, just the conference area, the convention centre, there was a recycling bin or a waste bin, nothing for organics. So I knew I'd find something when I audited it. However small as a discussion point, but what I found was about 99% of the materials had gone either in the wrong bin or you know, not in the recycling bin when they were recyclable. There was no collection for organics, and this is, I'll just repeat, Waste Management Association of Australia conference. So I'm explaining to the lucky auditorium, and you just, without sound, I'm sorry, it's going to fail, that you know, the milk bottles should have gone in the recycling bin, they were in the waste bin, the stuff in the waste bin should have been recycled, nothing was recovered. And then I get up on the stage, and this is, do you see the image? It really needed sound, because what happened was then the whole lot fell off the trolley and landed with a great big kaplunk on the ground. And so this auditorium of semi-smashed, hungover people suddenly went, ah! And woke up and had a bit of a listen. So anyway, and I have to say, I went to Melbourne for another Waste Management Association of Australia event only about 2-3 weeks ago, and it was exactly the same. There was not a bin option in place. So I do come with a science background, but not in environment, it's in pharmacology and physiology, believe it or not. And with a graduate diploma in education, but I prefer not to be in front of a classroom anytime soon. So I've come through to the role as Waste Audit Manager. You know, my roots are in Wipeout Waste, KESAB's flagship program, where we've been going into schools and auditing their bins and showing students and parents in the wider school community what is being thrown out on a daily basis, and then implementing systems to help them to reduce waste to landfill. And we've been doing that since 2005. So we're a bit been obsessed, those of us in the waste team at KESAB, myself included, and I couldn't help but be thrilled by this picture taken at Norwood Parade on Sunday at their fashion event. So the whole of the parade was closed off. There were actually some very nice green and, yellow and red covered bins with the bin covers, separate event bins. And I failed to take a picture of those, I apologise, but they were nearly empty. But look at the public bins, okay? So something's not going quite right there in terms of public behaviour and their ability to use separate bins independently. Oh, that one works. And equally, I thought, driving into work late Monday morning, I'll just see if I find anything interesting in town, because it's actually, for me, I see bins everywhere. And I think, how come we've got so many bins on the streets, piles of cardboard, skips everywhere, household bins? You don't see the house, I just see the bin banks everywhere, especially on bin day when outside multi-unit dwellings where they're just lined up endlessly, you know, and this is something I guess we've come to expect. But that's at probably 11 o'clock in the morning. That's the beautiful North Terrace, and that's what we see. So I guess part of it is I know that most of what's in there could probably be recycled or composted, but in terms of collecting, you know, it's all out in our faces on the street every day. I've included this slide, and I had to Google map the broad picture up the top. It's actually a childcare centre, but I came up to do a bin assessment at this location, and I saw this beautiful, colourful, you know, multicoloured, gorgeous building, childcare centre, and then where that circle is, that was the skip. So I pulled into the car park, and that's the one thing I did take a picture of was the skip. So this is what we see front and centre, dropping our children to kindergarten. This great big waste skip overflowing with bags, you know, plastic bags, probably full of cardboard and recyclables, because in these centres, and nappies, it'll be mostly nappies, but they don't have the systems in place to divert simple household recycling and cardboard. They don't have the capacity. So that's part of our program, is to go in and assess what's going in the bins, assess the capacity, get some new bin systems in, because obviously it's going to cost them a lot less to divert to cardboard for recycling and commingled recycling than to actually bag it up and bag it up and send it to landfill. That worked. And a public bin. This is not at the airport. Yes, it is. So we have been looking at airport bins. We've done a bit of work with Adelaide Airport. But, you know, and they're trying to get the public to source separate, but then you come across a particular coffee outlet, not branded, thankfully, and that's the message. So part of it is also the messages that we give, like, this is all rubbish. Well, it's not. You can see that I'm lifting the bin to have a look. I can see a 10-cent container, I can see some compostables, and obviously the inevitable coffee cup. But there is no opportunity for someone at that place at that time to separate anything, and it's all labelled rubbish, and it all dutifully goes to landfill. So, I mean, really what I was trying to focus on as I prepared this talk was creating opportunities for us to divert these materials and to be conscious that they need diverting. We should be doing it at home, at school, at work, in public places. It needs to be a normal thing, not something that's seen as a challenge in changing human behaviour. We've done a pretty good job changing it at home. We've got a bit of a way to go. But then you go out and this is the message you get. It's rubbish, put everything in here. This is another wrong message as far as I'm concerned, and that's walking in to do a bin assessment in an office area, or actually it was just a quick look, not so much of an assessment. But in that very small workspace, you can see there's one of the old round big garbage bins. There are also 3 under desk bins. I have to wonder what they are doing, if they're carving up body parts. Like, seriously, why do they... I can't fathom the need for that large bin and the 3 other small bins in that space. And I can tell you every fibre of my being wants to go back and audit that skip to see what on earth is going on there. This is just a typical photo of an under-desk bin. It's hard to choose a favourite, but it's convention to put a bin under at a workstation, yeah. So you can sit there and you got some paper, you got an apple core, you've had a can of Coke or a cup of coffee, and it all goes in the same bin. And at the end of the day, the cleaners come through at the end of the day, they remove that bag, replace that bag, you know, all this plastic goes in the landfill bin as well, and nothing's separated. This is a picture of a bin. They're like my children. I know where they all come from. She's like, sorry, I have a child down the back. She's an adult. This is a back of house bin, okay? This is where they dispose. They've actually got this particular venue is one of a chain, and they produce a certain type of food that people like to consume. They've got a 60-litre compost bag lined bin for food scraps, and they're collecting them very, very well. And then they've got this bin. And so this was actually about looking at putting in collection systems at a particular venue that I'm not naming. But you can see straight away, I look at it and I go, recyclable milk bottle, clean film plastic, and recyclable paper. And that for them is general waste. So that particular company is going to pay, 3 times as much to dispose of that to landfill as they would had they got a wall bale in there for the clean plastic and some sort of mechanism to separate out the recyclables. And we've got some very nice slimline bin bank systems available, which would be ideal to replace that. And it's not an isolated incident, it's the norm. This is another premise, and this is like the limited space that they've got in which to deal with things. And they are trying to recycle cardboard, but I just showed that because you can see it's not a well-designed space. And I thought, I hope with this, the name of this group that's meeting here tonight, maybe there's some people who are in at the designing phase who need to recognise that, once we go in and have a look at this, it's a matter of how do we deal with this? Because as far as this tenant goes, they don't have room for anything else in that space. But you can see it's used very, very inefficiently. Oh, I forgot I put notes there. So these are. I've finally put some dot points in. Accessibility. I've seen situations where a bar has to take 2 40-litre bins full of glass, which are obviously incredibly heavy. They've got to drag them 300 metres and then had to lift down 2 floors to dispose and replace that bin and get back up to the bar. If accessibility was built in up front, then it would be much more easy for these people to actually recover for recycling valuable commodities like glass. Instead, because of time constraints doing all of that, it tends to go to general waste because the system hasn't taken into account what that particular venue was producing in the first place. So fit for purpose is, have the bins there that these, like a cafe, have a means of disposing of milk bottles. They're managing to dispose of cardboard, for example, but the rest is going to landfill because there's nothing there for the milk bottles. Have a mechanism to divert the coffee grinds. So you need to make systems built in, even within that same space, but so that they can be managed, so they have an opportunity to dispose correctly, And then they don't have the disposal issues like I just mentioned about, you know, carting long distances. So, and I see it as a work health and safety issue as well when you don't do that. And I see it repeatedly with cleaners and in buildings and the places they put skips. You know, you've got to go through 4 locked doors and you know, swipe cards, and they're right in the most remotest part, or they've got to drag bins miles uphill that are very heavy. You know, it's an afterthought, the waste, the dealing with the waste that's generated out of so many places. And then they go back and they try and retrofit. So, I think I've just said most of that. So, obviously what we do, and I've got one of my fellow auditors down the front too, young Jess. She's been in and gotten quite mucky. You know, to understand what's going to be generated, you can do a bin assessment, you can go in and you can actually take that skip and pull it apart. And we do that, we separate the adult nappies from the recyclables, you know, at a nursing home, weigh it all off, work out the volumes, work out what they're going to need in terms of systems so that they can dispose, and that will be diverted from landfill rather than all being landfill items. So involving cleaners, particularly in the collection processes, and understanding. I've visited a lot of cleaners. It's like, does anyone remember the movie Being John Malkovich? So there's a uni I won't mention, but to get to the cleaners, to talk to them, you had to go through the girls' toilet and then open a secret door into the very middle of the building, which was just this unfinished concrete, and that was the little hole that the cleaners lived in. You know, that was quite interesting. So you need to talk to cleaners because they're the ones that have to actually make sure that what you've collected goes to the right collection system and is actually diverted. You've got to talk to the people who work within a building because there are barriers. Oh, that's not hygienic, you know, that's going to smell. There's little vinegar flies flying around the food we're trying to collect, etc. So if people are engaged and they have some ownership, this is what we've found in schools particularly, you know, if students are engaged and they have some ownership and they've helped to create their own systems, then they will participate in them. So here's an example of some separation systems in place, and this still happened, and I've kind of alluded to it a bit. This is about engaging the people within that organisation and the cleaners who are disposing of it. So that's a compostable bag with 10-cent containers and recycling in it. That's a beautifully, you know, a fairly good recycling collection, but in a black plastic bag, it's gone straight to waste because nobody can tell what's in that bag. And the cleaners just found a black plastic bag and it's gone to join that pile on the skip. Sorry, it's not me, it's the mic. Contamination, people not caring. A nice, like an organics collection done well, but disposed to the waste bin. This was all at the same venue. And then another compostable bag full of contamination that had gone in the organics bin. Oh, this is an old slide. So I've said it before, if you do an assessment and have conversations with people, audit and work out what the quantities are, put in some bin systems with consultation and education, monitor how they're going. I've put the little eco bin, the little green eco bin there. That's because I believe if you take away someone's precious under desk bin, if you just said to them, is it apples that you eat, or, you know, are you going to have waste or muesli, apples or muesli bars? Apples have a little green desktop bin, so that can go in organics. If it's muesli bar wrappers, have a little red one for your waste. But then they've got some ownership. So communicating too successes, like within an organisation, you know, greening up, we've diverted X amount. Our new systems, thank you for your contribution and using them correctly. That has enabled us to send X amount effectively away, away from landfill and off for recycling. Share that information, and this is particularly true for larger organisations and councils when we do audits with them and pilot projects to try and increase diversion rates. I never know my own PowerPoints, by the way, you might have guessed that. But, and this is my segue to Replas, the one thing I did get out of the recent Melbourne WAMA event was, the idea that we're calling it recycling when we put it in a recycling bin, but we're not recycling, we're collecting, okay? We're getting better at collecting. We've got a long way to go in many, many sectors, but it's just collecting, and then it's just being stockpiled, or, some is sent to China, a lot is being stockpiled. What we need to do is build on that pull-through effect of getting the recycled product at the end. Robbie, who happens to be my son-in-law, which is why we're here, this is one of Replas's slides, but basically, generating 200,000 tonnes of plastic per annum and recycling 3,000 through Replas, a lot of it is going overseas and a lot of it is just sitting stockpiled in warehouses. So we need to actually showcase that end product, which is what KESAB does in all of our education centres, whether it's construction and demolition recycling materials, repeat rubber, reused timbers and bricks, and also the recycled plastics. And there they are. That's stolen from Replas as well. But that was just a lucky coincidence that they were sitting on a Replas bench. Oh, I was going to leave the snake alone, Jess. I'll leave it, look, I'll leave it there. We'll have some question time later. Hopefully I haven't gone on too long. Thank you.